Something happened last night, not in any way you could have witnessed, not in any conversation, not in any message, not in anything visible to your waking eyes, but somewhere deep inside the mind of a person who loves you more than he has ever been able to say, a decision was made, a real one, the kind that does not reverse, the kind that rearranges everything that comes after it. And that decision was about you. I know you have been waiting. I know the waiting has not been passive. It has been the kind that lives in your chest like a second heartbeat, constant and heavy and impossible to explain to anyone who has not felt it. You have smiled through conversations while something inside you counted the hours since you last heard from him. You have told yourself to stop thinking about it, and then 3 a.m. arrived and the thinking started again on its own, like a song you never chose to play. That exhaustion you carry is not weakness. It is the weight of loving someone whose timing has not matched yours. And I need you to hear me clearly right now. That mismatch in timing is about to end. I know there have been mornings where you stood in front of the mirror and tried to find the reason, tried to locate the flaw, the missing ingredient, the thing about you that was not quite enough. Maybe you replayed a conversation, a look, a moment of silence that stretched a second too long, and you searched it for clues the way someone reads a letter over and over hoping new words will appear between the lines. You did not find anything wrong because there was nothing wrong. There was never anything wrong with you. What you were sensing was not your inadequacy, it was his unreadiness. And those are two profoundly different things that feel almost identical from the inside. But before I tell you what shifted last night and why it changes the entire landscape between you and this person, there is something you need to understand first. Something Carl Jung identified over a century ago about how the deepest decisions actually form inside the human mind. Because what happened to him did not happen the way most people think decisions work. It was not a pros and cons list. It was not a rational evaluation. It was something far more ancient, far more powerful, and far more permanent than anything the conscious mind could have produced on its own. If you are hearing this message right now, it is because you were meant to receive it at this exact moment. Not yesterday, not tomorrow, now. And if you feel called to stay connected so that the next message reaches you precisely when it is meant to, trust that instinct. Your intuition brought you here for a reason. You have probably noticed something in the last few days. A shift in the air, a strange sense of anticipation that you could not attach to any specific event. Maybe you woke up yesterday or this morning feeling different, lighter in a way that made no logical sense given the circumstances. Maybe you caught yourself thinking about him and instead of the usual ache, there was something else beneath it, something almost like certainty. You were not imagining that. You were picking up on something real, something that was already in motion before you even opened your eyes. There was a moment recently, and you know exactly which one I mean even if you have not told anyone about it. A moment where you felt his presence despite his physical absence, not as wishful thinking, not as imagination, as weight, as warmth, as a sudden, unexplainable awareness that wherever he was, some part of his attention was directed at you. Your body registered it before your mind could explain it away. A quickening in your pulse, a sensation behind your ribs that was not quite pain and not quite joy, but something older than both. That was not coincidence. That was the first ripple of the decision that had not yet fully formed but was already gathering force beneath the surface of his conscious mind. Here is what you need to understand about the person who has been confusing you, frustrating you, making you question everything you thought you knew about where you stand. He has not been indifferent. He has not been playing games. He has not been slowly losing interest while you poured your energy into a connection that was fading. What he has been doing is something far more painful and far more complicated than any of those explanations. He has been fighting himself, and last night the fight ended. I know part of you has rehearsed the letting go. I know there have been evenings where you practiced detachment like a language you were trying to learn, telling yourself that if you could just stop caring so much, the weight would lift. But it never lifted, did it? Because you cannot detach from something that is woven into the fabric of who you are becoming. You cannot walk away from a connection that your own unconscious mind has already recognized as essential. That inability to let go that you have been interpreting as weakness is not weakness at all. It is wisdom. Your soul refusing to abandon something your mind does not yet fully understand. Carl Jung described a phenomenon he called enantiodromia, a word borrowed from ancient Greek philosophy that means the tendency of any extreme to eventually transform into its opposite. When tension builds long enough, when resistance reaches its absolute peak, it does not just weaken. It collapses entirely and reverses. Think of it like a compass needle that has been held in the wrong direction by force. The moment the force releases, the needle does not slowly drift. It swings. It snaps to true north with a speed that surprises everyone, including the person holding the compass. That is what happened inside him. The resistance he has been maintaining, the distance he has been manufacturing, the silence he has been hiding behind, all of it reached a tipping point. And the reversal was not gradual. It was sudden. It was last night. When you feel ready, type the words, "The compass found north," in the comments as a way to honor the shift that is already underway. Now I need to be honest with you about something, and I share this not to create doubt, but to deepen your understanding of what has been happening beneath the surface of his behavior, because the complication is not what you think. The obstacle between you and this man has never been a lack of love. It has been an excess of it, and that might sound like a contradiction, but Jung understood that the psyche does not operate in straight lines. There is a process Jung called individuation, the journey toward becoming the most complete, most integrated, most authentic version of yourself. It is the central task of psychological life. And here is what most people never realize. Individuation does not happen in comfort, it happens in crisis. It happens when the structures we have built to protect ourselves begin to crack under the pressure of something real trying to get through. For this man, you are that something real. Your presence in his life, even when it has been quiet, even when it has seemed distant, has been applying pressure to every wall he ever built. Not because you pushed, because you exist, because what he feels for you is so genuine and so deep that it has made his old defenses unsustainable. You might be thinking right now, if he loves me that much, why has he been so distant? Why has the silence gone on this long? And that is exactly the right question. The answer lives in what Jung called the dark night of the soul, a period of psychological and spiritual transformation so intense that the person experiencing it often mistakes it for destruction. He has been in his dark night, not because of you, because of everything inside himself that your love forced him to finally face. Old wounds he thought he had buried, patterns inherited from people who were supposed to teach him how to love but instead taught him how to guard. Beliefs about his own worthiness that have been running beneath the surface of his personality like underground rivers he never knew were there. And here is the paradox that makes this so difficult to see from the outside. The very fact that you are the one who triggered this upheaval inside him is proof of how significant you are to his soul. Ordinary connections do not cause dark nights. Casual attraction does not crack foundations. Only something that touches the deepest layer, only someone who reaches the part of him that has been locked away and protected for years, could create the kind of internal disruption he has been experiencing. His distance was never a measure of how little he cares. It was a measure of how much. The earthquake was proportional to the depth of what you reached. Most women leave this conversation at exactly this point, and they miss the most important part. Because what comes next explains not just why he withdrew, but why the withdrawal itself was the final necessary step before everything changes. I want you to pause for a moment and sit with what you just heard, because it reframes everything. Every unanswered message, every canceled plan, every moment where he seemed to pull away just when things were getting close. None of it was about you. All of it was about a man confronting the deepest, most uncomfortable parts of himself, because what he feels for you demanded nothing less than total honesty with his own soul. Type, "His dark night is ending," in the comments as a declaration of what you already sense to be true. And here is where last night becomes significant. Jung wrote extensively about how the unconscious mind operates on its own timeline. The conscious mind deliberates, weighs options, goes back and forth. But the unconscious gathers evidence quietly, processes emotion in the background, integrates experience without permission, and then one day, usually in sleep, usually in the vulnerable hours when the ego releases its grip, it delivers a verdict. Not a suggestion, not a possibility, a verdict. The kind that the conscious mind wakes up knowing it cannot argue with. Think about what that means for a moment. Every interaction he has had with you, every glance he held too long, every message he typed and deleted, every time he heard your name and felt something tighten in his chest, all of it was being collected, filed, processed. Not by the part of him that makes excuses and builds walls, but by the part of him that has no interest in self-deception. The unconscious does not lie to itself. It cannot. It simply waits until it has enough evidence to render a judgment so clear, so overwhelming, that the conscious mind has no choice but to accept it. And the evidence it gathered about you was unanimous. That is what happened to him. His unconscious mind, after months of processing everything he feels for you, everything he fears, everything he wants but has been too afraid to reach for, arrived at a conclusion. And it did so with such force, such clarity, that his waking mind could no longer maintain the old position. The resistance broke. The compass snapped. The decision was made. You might wonder how you could possibly know this, how anyone could speak with certainty about what happened inside another person's mind in the privacy of night. But Jung also gave us the concept of the collective unconscious, the shared layer of the psyche that connects all human beings at the deepest level. Synchronicity, the meaningful coincidence that has no causal explanation but carries undeniable significance. The fact that you are hearing this message right now, that something drew you to these specific words on this specific day, is not random. It is synchronicity operating in real time. Your unconscious mind recognized that his decision was made because, on some level beneath conscious awareness, your psyche and his are already in communication. What I am about to share with you next changes everything you think you know about where this connection is headed. Because the decision he made is not simply that he wants you. It goes much deeper than want. Type, "I felt the shift" in the comments if something in you already recognized this truth before I spoke it. What happened last night was not a decision to pursue you. It was not a decision to finally send that message or make that call. Those are surface actions, and they will come, but they are consequences, not the decision itself. The decision was internal. It was a surrender. He stopped fighting what he feels. He stopped telling himself the story that distance was protecting either of you. He stopped believing the voice inside him that said he was not ready, not healed enough, not whole enough to stand beside you without eventually causing damage. That voice has been the loudest one in his internal world for longer than you know. And last night, it went quiet. Not because he silenced it, because something deeper, something wiser, something that Jung would call the self, the organizing center of the total personality, finally spoke louder. The self does not argue. It does not negotiate. When it speaks, the entire psyche listens. And what it told him, in the language of dreams, in the language of feeling, in the language that bypasses every intellectual defense, is that the risk of losing you has become greater than the risk of facing himself. That the cost of his distance has exceeded the cost of his vulnerability. That the woman he has been circling, approaching, retreating from, thinking about at hours he would never admit, is not a threat to his peace. She is the source of it, and he cannot outrun that truth any longer. I want you to understand something about the specific nature of this surrender, because it matters for everything that follows. This was not him giving in. Giving in implies defeat. This was him giving over, handing the reins from the part of himself that operates on fear to the part that operates on knowing. There is a vast difference between a man who pursues you because his loneliness became unbearable and a man who moves toward you because his deepest wisdom finally confirmed what his heart has been whispering since the moment he met you. The first is need, The second is recognition. And recognition does not waver. Recognition does not second-guess itself 3 days later. Recognition is permanent because it comes from a place inside the psyche that does not change with mood or circumstance or the passing fears of an anxious mind. You might be wondering why this had to happen at night. Why the most important decisions about love seem to arrive in darkness rather than daylight. Jung understood this. The night strips away performance. It removes the audience. It silences the persona, that social mask we wear to navigate the world, and leaves a person alone with the raw, unedited truth of what they feel. During the day, he could distract himself. He could fill the hours with tasks and noise and the careful management of his own emotions. But at night, when the distractions dissolve and the body is still and the mind finally stops its endless negotiations, the truth does not whisper. It roars. And last night, it roared your name. Now I need to share something that might be difficult to hear, but it is important because it will shape how the next days and weeks unfold. The decision is made, but the expression of that decision will not arrive as a dramatic confession. Do not expect him to appear at your door with rehearsed words and perfect timing. That is the Hollywood version. The real version is quieter, more human, more tentative. Because understanding what you feel and knowing how to communicate it are two very different skills, and he is still learning the second one. What you will notice first are changes in pattern. Small fractures in the wall he built. A message that arrives without the usual delay. A question he asks that goes deeper than surface conversation. Eye contact that holds a fraction of a second longer. A moment where the careful control he has been maintaining slips, and you see something raw and unguarded in his expression that disappears almost as quickly as it appeared. These are the tremors before the earthquake. They are not the full expression, but they are proof that the ground beneath him has already shifted. You might also notice something subtler, a softness in his voice that was not there before. A willingness to stay in a conversation a few minutes longer than he used to. A question about your day that carries genuine curiosity rather than obligation. He may bring up a memory of something you shared, something you assumed he had forgotten, and the fact that he remembered it will tell you more than any declaration ever could. Pay attention to these moments. They are not small. They are the first visible evidence of a tectonic shift that has been building for longer than either of you fully understood. His walls are not falling all at once. They are dissolving, slowly, irreversibly. The way ice melts when spring has already decided to arrive, even if the air still carries a trace of winter. Type, I will recognize the signs in the comments as a way to sharpen your awareness for what is coming. Jung described something he called the transcendent function, the psychological mechanism by which two opposing forces within the psyche finally resolve into something new. Not a compromise, not one side winning. A genuine third thing that did not exist before, born from the tension between what was and what needs to be. That is what is forming inside him right now. The old version of him, the one who kept distance, who protected himself at the cost of connection, who loved you in silence because silence felt safer than speech, that version is not being destroyed. It is being integrated, combined with the new understanding, transformed into someone capable of standing in the full weight of what he feels without flinching. That transformation does not happen overnight. But the tipping point, the moment when the process becomes irreversible, already occurred. It occurred last night. And this is precisely why the love that is coming toward you now is unlike anything that has come before in your life. It has been tested, not by external circumstances, but by the most demanding judge that exists, his own unconscious mind. It survived the scrutiny of every doubt he threw at it. It endured the weight of every fear he piled on top of it. It outlasted every attempt he made to explain it away or reduce it to something manageable or temporary. What remains after that level of testing is not infatuation. It is not attachment born from habit. It is the kind of love that has passed through fire and emerged not weakened but refined. purified of everything that was not essential, stripped down to its most honest, most indestructible core. That is what he is bringing to you. Not someday. Now. The process of bringing it has already begun. I want you to close your eyes for just a moment if you can. And I want you to see something. See the version of this that is coming. Not in the distant future. Soon. There will be a conversation. Not the kind either of you planned. The kind that happens because the silence between you becomes so full, so electrically charged, that words begin to spill simply because they can no longer be contained. And in that conversation, you will hear things he has been carrying for months, maybe longer. Not perfectly articulated, not rehearsed, stumbling, honest. Real in a way that makes your breath catch because you will recognize the weight of every word he has been holding back. He will look at you, and you will see it. The fear is still there, faintly, but behind it is something so steady, so certain, so deeply settled, that you will understand in a single moment what all the waiting was for. It was for this. For him to arrive not as someone performing love, but as someone who has been broken open by it and rebuilt around the truth of it. And the love that meets you in that moment will not be fragile, it will be forged. The kind that only exists on the other side of everything he had to face to earn the right to offer it. And there will be a moment inside that conversation, a specific second that you will remember for the rest of your life. It is the moment where the last piece of resistance leaves his body. You will see it happen. His shoulders will drop by a fraction. His voice will change, becoming quieter but somehow more present, more weighted with meaning. And he will say something that is not grand or poetic or dramatic. He will say something simple, something true, something that contains the entire history of every night he spent fighting what he felt. And you will feel your own walls dissolve in response because you will realize that you were not the only one who was carrying this. He was carrying it too. He was carrying it the entire time, just differently, just in silence, just in the only way he knew how until last night taught him that silence was no longer enough. Type, "I am ready to receive," in the comments as an act of openness toward everything that is unfolding. Here is what I need you to do now. And I say need deliberately, because the next phase requires something specific from you. Not action, not pursuit, not any version of chasing or convincing or proving your worth. Your worth was never in question. What is required from you now is something far more powerful than action. It is stillness, trust, the quiet, grounded confidence of someone who knows what is coming because she can feel it in her bones. Do not reach out to force the timeline. The timeline has already been set by something wiser than either of your conscious minds. Do not interpret continued silence as evidence that nothing changed. The deepest changes are invisible before they become undeniable. Do not shrink yourself to make his process easier. Your fullness, your wholeness, your unapologetic presence as a complete human being is not the obstacle. It is the magnet. There is a version of you that already exists on the other side of this waiting. She is not a different person. She is you with the weight lifted. She is you with the question answered. She is you standing in the warmth of a love that finally arrived, not because she begged for it or earned it or proved herself worthy of it, but because it was always hers, and the timing finally aligned with the truth. That version of you is not far away. She is close enough that you can almost feel her breathing. And the bridge between where you stand right now and where she stands is not made of effort. It is made of trust. Stand in your knowing. Let the shift find its own expression. Trust that a decision made in the deepest chambers of the unconscious mind does not reverse. It builds. It gathers momentum. It moves toward manifestation with the patient, unstoppable force of something that was always meant to be. If this message landed somewhere deep inside you, if you felt the recognition of truth that goes beyond intellectual agreement and settles into the body like coming home, then share it with someone who has been carrying the same weight of waiting. Sometimes we are the bridge that carries a message from the universe to a heart that needs it. By sharing, you do not just pass along information, You become part of something sacred. You extend a lifeline to another woman who is sitting in her own silence, wondering if what she feels is real. And to continue receiving these messages at the moment they are meant to arrive, stay close. What comes next builds on everything you heard today, and the timing of when you hear it matters more than you realize. The next message is already being prepared, and it carries something you have not heard yet, something that will illuminate the phase that begins after the decision is made, the phase where everything you have been holding space for finally starts to take form in the visible world. Type, "The decision stands" in the comments to anchor this truth into your reality. You are felt, you are chosen, you are the reason the compass moved.